The Vox Markets Podcast with Justin Waite. Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy anything based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.
Welcome to the podcast on Thursday, the 8th of April, 2021. On the podcast today, Vadim Alexandre, Head of Healthcare at SP Angel, discusses news from Cambridge Cognition, a company he has covered since it was 22 pence, which means it's done over a 400% rise. Also on the podcast, I have two lists for you, the top 5 most followed companies on Vox Markets in the last 24 hours, and the top 5 most read RNSs too. By the way, you can check out both these lists at voxmarkets.co.uk, where you'll see lots of other content. In fact, there's an article there on Minds and Machines that sell their assets to GoDaddy. Distill, company there, doing very well. Cadence, by the way, Minerals, watch a webinar hosted by Vox Markets and Turner Pope and Francesca from Vox. Gfinity expands partnership with global ad firm Venatus. Plus, of course, you can see our COVID-19 index. Biggest rise of the day is Gfinity, up 7% to 4.5. And the biggest faller there is Therapeutics. That's down 6.3% to 20 pence. Check that out at voxmarkets.co.uk.
Vox Markets is an online community of investors that runs a free mobile and desktop platform that allows you to track news and updates about any UK-listed company, offering RNS push notifications, detailed charts, pricing data, and much more. Find out more at voxmarkets.co.uk/app.
And joining me on the podcast right now is Vadim Alexandre, Head of Healthcare at SP Angel. You all right, fella?
How are you doing, Justin?
Yeah, good. And you must be feeling good, because you've had some good news out today. We'll get into the news in a bit on Cambridge Cognition, and a regular mentioner of this company you've been over the last... In fact, since the dash for cash, pretty much, or just after that. In May last year, you covered them, and probably a bit before that, but May last year, 27th of May, they were 20 odd pence then. And now they're 119 or 120, almost close to on the news today. And you've mentioned them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times over the last year. So you've been consistent. I hope you backed up the truck and remortgaged your house before you bought last May, did you? Because you've been doing very well if you had by now.
I'm pretty happy with my position in this company. Doesn't always work out this way, but yeah, this is one that's just a steady performer. It's still a holder today. Believer in these small, steady growth businesses, right? I mean, steady growth is not to say small growth. They think they did 34% last year-on-year growth. And, I think the forecast is to do another 20-something this year. But it's now bearing out again. Today they had another contract win with a new pharmaceutical client, which is great. That pharmaceutical client, they say in the announcement, has a pipeline of drugs in this space. So, should they deliver on this contract, which I'm sure they will, because these are routine contracts for them. It's what they do well. It's their specialism. It's why these companies hire them for. It's to assess cognition in their patients remotely, right? And as you might imagine, this is exactly what pharma companies need right now, is the ability to do so remotely because of COVID. So, they're doing the right thing at the right time. And these companies have big pipelines of drugs to test in these areas, right? So, and that's specifically how these contracts could get bigger and bigger over time. So started out with not a small contract for Cambridge Cognition, but a small contract for the pharma company, which is £500,000. This is significant. This is it's almost 10% of revenues incremental. It's a little less than that, but I think last year they did 6.7. Their order book for this year is already covered to the tune of 6, and now they're stacking on contracts, and we've just finished Q1 of this year. So it's looking good for Cambridge Cognition's revenue visibility to achieve their growth forecast this year.
Yeah,
something like 20% plus growth. So a good steady companies, as we've said in the past, moving into profitability. It's just moved into profitability Q4 last year. That's when you see a big uplift in the stock price. And we're seeing it today, and I think there's more to come.
Yeah. Well, I remember you said this afterwards, and I think the second time you probably mentioned it, you said moving into profitability. I said, what? Because I genuinely, that's one of my white flags that goes up. That I'm looking for companies, small cap companies that go from loss making to profitability. It's a major inflection point. When they don't have to go back to the shareholders again. And I always look for that. And I missed it first time around. And it had risen by quite a bit. I thought I'd let it come back a little bit, and then I just took my eye off the ball, I think, and I just looked elsewhere. And then and I think it did come back a little, went sideways, but I took my eye off the ball, and that was about 36 pence, 37 pence around about there then, and it's gone on, and fair play. It's a typical example of, having some patience in the stock sometimes. It rises gradually, then consolidates for a while. Like this, for example, it generally has, from May to, say, end of June, a couple of months on the rise, then it went sideways till September, pretty much. And those times when it goes sideways, it's quite easy as an investor to get impatient, look for something else, look for the shiny brand new stock somewhere, mm-hmm. and then forget it. But then all of a sudden it goes up again, and it went to like 50 pence, 60 pence, and it went sideways again in October last year for another 2-3 months. And then it rallied again, and all of a sudden it pops like today. Wow, it's had a steady rise. But all stock prices like that. I'm in stocks now that the business you can see is getting better, and you read the updates, it's improving, it's getting better. The losses, they're getting towards profitability, and there's some volatility, and then you get sideways traffic. The amount of times I've jumped out of stocks just on boredom because it's gone sideways for a while, and then I got out today, a week or a month later, it started to really rally. Oh my God, I just wish I just had a bit of patience sometimes, and so fair play to you for hanging in there. I mean, what do you see? What's the market cap? It's still only sub 40 million, isn't it?
Well, this is it. This is still, by healthcare standards, a tiddler. It has mileage in it still in terms of, and it's outperforming its peers. It's just it's a great little company. Okay, so let's think about the future. Where could, so as announced today, they could get bigger contracts with these ever expanding pipelines of CNS drugs, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a new client. It's a big pharma company. They've announced that it has a big pipeline. It could be, they could probably strike bigger contracts with just this client alone. But I guess the beauty of this stock is that they're kind of getting bigger as a company, and their pipeline of opportunities is getting broader in terms of number of clients. It's getting bigger in terms of contract size, and they've demonstrated that before as well, right? They've had £2 million contracts. Their order book is highly visible. They have about, I think, over 12 million sterling in their order book, 6 of which they're comfortable is going to be delivered this year. These are contractually agreed, right? So, last year's revenues was 6.7, and this year's order book is visible, of which 6 is visible, right? And they have another 6 behind that in future years. So, now they're just stacking on revenues on top of it, and they've done that already this year. They've made an announcement of another 1.3 million contract, I think a month ago, and then this 500,000 contract this month. And, there's still 8 months left in this year, right? Yeah. So, this is what we want to see. Now, where are the risks? Okay, the risks are overconcentration of, I think we mentioned this last time, because Ixico was a victim of that, overconcentration of revenues with one client. Now, I don't see that with Cambridge Cognition. Yeah, I think their revenues are a bit more diversified. There's always a risk of that, but something to keep an eye on, in the future. But I don't see that as a risk right now. In fact, if anything, today's announcement kind of gives me confidence on this year. So if you can see a year of 20% plus growth, that should drive the shares further. They're kind of really going from strength to strength right now. Profitable, cash generative, cash balance is growing. They're at 3 million on the last announcement. They said they have about 3 million in cash. That's more than enough to cover any kind of problems, none of which I see on the horizon. I see more news flow that's positive than anything right now. Now, where could there be kind of big upswings in news flow? They could have a partnership agreement. The companies, I think they're in discussions with various jurisdictions like China and other areas. So there could be some surprises there that are bigger contracts. I'm not betting on that, but that could be an upside surprise, if you see what I mean. What I'm betting on is just steady, consistent growth, stacking on bigger contracts, continuing to diversify revenues with big clients like the one announced today that has future pipeline drugs that they'll need, they'll need their products, their services for.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And And when you get a big rise like today, or a decent rise like today, it also puts it on the map of other people, on the radar. People look at rises and they say, "Oh, that's a rise, what's that?" And they do some more research on it, and then so it makes it puts its head above the parapet and becomes more aware amongst investors, I think. So it's good. So do you?
CNS, central nervous system, just so you know, is a niche area with specialist providers like these guys, like Cambridge Cognition, like Ixico. And it just takes the contract research organizations like these two companies that feed into this broader research, objective of these large pharmaceutical companies are highly in demand. It wouldn't surprise me if one day, they're targets for takeouts. Now, you can never bet on being a takeout target, but they are niche specialists that would fit nicely into a larger CRO that wants CNS expertise down the line. Do you know what I mean? So down the line, the end game I see here is maybe a takeout. When that happens is, my guess is as good as yours. But at least these companies are positioning themselves to be just that. As they become more revenue generating and more profitable, people don't often take out, companies that are not doing too well, right? These are companies that are doing well. Well, in Cambridge Cognition's case, today is a good example of them, just putting in another mile, into this journey of becoming maybe a mid-stage, mid-cap type contract research organization in CNS. And that's when they appear on you're talking about the radar of investors, but I'm talking about appear on the radar of larger CROs that want this niche specialism. I think, once they get above 10 million revenues, maybe 10 to 20 range, they start to be real takeout targets for larger organizations.
Yeah.
And a takeout then is, you wouldn't expect anything less than maybe 50 to 100% upside, right? Takeout, I wouldn't sell the business at anything less than that kind of a premium, right? So it would be a phenomenal story to see something like that as an end game.
Yeah. More stuff. Yeah. So you have to come on next week now and tell us about the next 5-10 bagger. Okay.
I got to find one.
Yeah, exactly. How many? Do you have a target in mind for this before you think, oh, hang on a second, or just hang on now? You've done quite well,
Oh, when to get out? It's hard, right? You have to kind of assess. Right now, I just don't see the negative news flow. Okay, so I don't see where it can come from. It's always, I mentioned one area is revenue concentration and losing a big contract. That could always be, that you can never guess that, but that's always a risk. But I don't see it here with Cambridge Cognition because they've been diversifying their revenues over the years, specifically over the last couple of years. That's one area of negative news flow. In terms of positive news flow, I see more opportunity for positive news flow that, I don't see the negative news flow right now. So I can only see more contract wins. I think they're going to hit their forecasts. I'm growing less and less worried about that with every contract, like today's contract. So, all that's positive news flow for the next 12 months, right? So, reasons to act are, do you see something on the horizon that's a binary event that could, adversely affect the share price? I don't. Do I see stuff on the horizon that can make it move upwards? Yes, I do. Yeah. So, I have to, the way I see it is, let's play it by ear over the next 12 months. Let's watch it evolve, monthly kind of.
Yeah, absolutely. Marvelous stuff. COG, Cambridge Cognition, it's a big rise today, but, often you have consolidations and pullbacks, so put it on your watch list, and Vadim, we'll speak to you next week.
Thanks, Justin.
Okay, it's time for the top 5 most followed companies on Vox Markets in the last 24 hours. They are at 5, Oracle Power. It's a non-mover, 0.55. At 4, Microsec Systems, 6.8% up to 0.235. At 3, Ilika announced a new broker, Berenberg, big broker. And they've got cash. And of course, they're in solid-state batteries. And solid-state batteries are very much the hot topic of the day. And so I think there could be maybe, putting out some feelers for a listing in the NASDAQ. Of course, this is complete conjecture on my behalf. But, all tech companies are valued more highly in the NASDAQ. So it would make sense. Bigger access to capital. And they need capital, of course, to develop solid state. But, interesting. At 2, Inspired Energy. It's down 2.8% to 17.25. And at 1, BPC. That's Bahamas Petroleum Company, up 12.5% to 0.675. Okay, it's time for the top 5 most read RNSs. They are as follows. At 5, Gunsand, update, low 6 limited. At 4, Vast Resources, appointment of underground mine manager. At 3, Gfinity expands partnership with Vinatus. At 2, Remote Monitor Systems, MHRA approval. And at 1, Supply Atme Capital, notice of 2019 AGM. Boring RNS, that is. By the way, Gfinity, that's very good, that. And do you know what? The share price is frustrating because there's warrant holders, of course, selling. They expire in October. And way before then, as they dry up, I feel that will re-rate. That's complete conjecture on my behalf. Please do your own research. I'm a holder of Gfinity. It's esports. I'm a big fan of it. I like John and the team. I think it'll do very, very well. But it's just frustrating, the share price being held back by a drip of sort of sellers all the time. But that's temporary, as is life. Thanks for listening. Muchos appreciados.
The Vox Markets Podcast with Justin Waite. Nothing in this podcast is intended as investment advice, and the people in this podcast may hold positions in the stocks they talk about. Do not buy anything based solely on a tip or recommendation. Please do your own research.